My name is Mark. I am 31, and for 3 years, I worked nights at a self-storage place on the edge of town. It is one of those big spread-out facilities with long rows of metal doors and a little glass office in the front. We were open 24 hours, but the gate stayed locked at night and customers had to punch in a code to get in. On paper, my job was simple: watch the cameras, handle late customers, and walk the grounds a few times. Most nights were dead. I would make coffee around 10, turn on the monitors, and let some podcast play while I did paperwork. The building sat right off a county road that got quiet after midnight. When you stepped outside, you could hear the wind in the trees and the hum of the highway way off in the distance. It was boring but safe money. That is what I thought. Anyway, the office had a wall of 8 monitors that showed different angles of the property. We had 2 cameras on the front gate, 2 in each main lane between the rows of units, one on the back fence and one inside the office pointed at the front door. I used to joke that I saw more raccoons on those screens than people. Most of the time that was true. It was a Friday night in November. It had that cold, dry feeling where you can see your breath but there is no snow yet. My shift was from 10 at night to 6 in the morning. The day guy, a retired firefighter named Doug, did his usual handoff and left right at 10:15. We chatted about the local team for a minute, then he slapped the counter and said he would see me Monday. Nothing felt off. The first weird thing happened around 11:30. I was sipping coffee and half reading an email when the buzzer from the gate sounded. When someone enters a gate code, the system dings in the office and pulls their camera feed up on the big screen. I glanced up expecting to see a car. Instead, there was nothing. The gate just sat there under the yellow lights. No headlights. No person at the keypad. No motion at all. Sometimes the keypad glitches, so I did not think much of it. I cleared the screen and went back to my email. A few minutes later, the buzzer sounded again. I looked up. Same thing. Empty gate. No car pulling in. No one messing with the keypad. Just the gate sitting there like a still photo. I got up and walked to the front door. From the glass I could see the gate about 50 yards away. Nothing. Just the road and the chain link. The night was quiet. No engine noise. No taillights disappearing into the dark. I remember telling myself it was probably a wiring issue and making a note to tell Doug. It did not really worry me, but it stayed in the back of my mind. Around midnight, I started my first walk of the grounds. Company policy said we had to do at least 2 full walks each night. I grabbed the flashlight, clipped the radio to my belt, and stepped out, locking the office door behind me. My breath puffed in the cold air. The motion lights along the lanes clicked on as I walked past. The place always felt different on foot. On the monitors, it was just rectangles and shadows. But when you walked between the rows of units, the sound changed. It was like being in an empty alley that never ended. Every footstep bounced off the metal doors and came back to you a little delayed. I shined the light along the row, checking for open locks or anything weird. Everything looked normal. I was halfway down the second row when I heard it. A quick metallic rattle behind me, like a unit door being tested. I spun around with the flashlight. The beam slid across a dozen doors, each locked with its round silver disc. Nothing moved. No door was halfway up. No person ducked out of sight. Just silence, and my own heart pounding in my ears. I told myself it was probably the metal popping in the cold. That happens sometimes. Still, I picked up the pace. I finished the walk faster than usual and went back to the office. As I reached for my keys, I had this sudden thought. I had locked the door when I left. I clearly remembered turning the deadbolt. Now the handle turned freely. The office door was unlocked. I stood there for a second, keys in my hand, just listening. The blinds in the front windows showed the dark parking lot behind me. I could hear the faint buzz of the snack machine inside. My first thought was that I had messed up and never actually turned the lock all the way. I pushed the door open with my foot and leaned in, scanning the room with the flashlight. The office looked exactly the way I left it. Computer on the desk, my coffee cup by the keyboard, radio charger humming on the wall. Nobody behind the counter. Nobody crouched in the corner. The back door to the small break room was closed. Still, my chest felt tight. I shut the door, locked it again, and this time yanked it to make sure it was secure. When I sat back down in the chair, I checked the time. It was 12:23. I turned to the monitors out of habit. For a second, I thought something was wrong with the screen. In the top left feed, the one for lane 1, there was a figure standing in the middle of the pavement. No car around them, no unit door open near them. Just a person standing there between the rows, facing the camera. My throat went dry. I leaned closer. The figure was a man, maybe in his 40s. He wore a dark jacket and jeans and a beanie pulled low. He stood perfectly still, with his hands in his pockets. His face was shadowed, but I had the feeling he was looking right at the camera. I switched to the next camera to see the angle from lane 2. Empty. Lane 3, empty. Back fence, empty. I went back to lane 1. The man was gone. The pavement was bare again. No person, no shadow. Just that long strip of concrete and closed doors. My mind started doing the thing where it tries to find the easiest answer. Maybe it was a glitch, some old footage playing for a second. But the system did not even have that feature. These were live feeds only. Or maybe he had just stepped out of frame while I clicked over. That made more sense. I checked the access log on the computer. Anyone who punched in a gate code would show up with a timestamp and the last 4 digits of their phone number. The last entry was Doug, leaving at 10:15. No one had come in since. The buzzer sounded again. I jumped. The main screen flashed to the gate camera. This time, there was a vehicle. A white pickup idled in front of the keypad, its headlights cutting across the fence. The driver leaned out and punched in a code. The gate started sliding open. I felt a rush of relief. Actual customers meant things were normal. The pickup rolled in. The tag matched Unit 134, one of our longtime renters. A guy named Paul, who ran a small landscaping business. He waved at the office as he drove past. I waved back even though he probably could not see me behind the glare. For the next half hour, nothing happened. I watched Paul load something into his truck, lock up, and leave. The gate closed behind him. The lot went dark again. I told myself that if anything strange happened one more time, I would call the police, even if it felt stupid. At 1:15, the buzzer went off again. My stomach clenched. I looked at the screen. Empty gate. No pickup, no car, no taillights on the road. Just that rectangle of chain link and concrete. That was enough. I picked up the phone and called the non-emergency line. I explained that our gate was acting strange and that I had seen someone on the cameras who did not show up in the log. The dispatcher asked if anyone was trying to break in. I said no, but that I was alone out there and something felt wrong. She said an officer would swing by when free. For a while, just knowing someone was coming helped. I leaned back in the chair and watched the screens. That was when I noticed something I had not seen before. Camera 7, the one in the office, recorded a little thumbnail feed in the corner. It showed my back as I sat at the desk. Over my shoulder, I could see the front door and the blinds. I let my eyes drift over it lazily. Then my heart nearly stopped. In the glass of the front door, barely visible between the slats of the blinds, there was a reflection, a faint shape, like someone standing close to the door, just out of view of the office camera. I froze. The hair on my arms stood up. The door itself in the camera frame looked normal, but the reflection in the glass showed a dark shape where none should be. I could not hear anything over the pounding in my ears, but I imagined I could feel someone on the other side of that thin metal and glass. Very slowly, I reached over and clicked the little icon to switch camera 7 to full screen. The image got larger. My own shoulders filled the bottom of the frame, the door above them. The reflection was clearer now. It was a person outside the office, close to the glass, turned slightly as if they were listening instead of looking in. I did not move. I did not even breathe. I just stared at that reflection. After a second, the person brought a hand up and rested it on the glass. The skin looked pale under the parking lot lights. I watched the faint imprint of their fingers slide down a few inches, like they were testing how solid it was. I grabbed the phone again and this time dialed 911. I whispered my address and told the dispatcher there was someone right outside my door. She told me to stay on the line and not to confront them. She asked if the door was locked. I said yes. I did not add that for at least 10 minutes earlier in the night. I had no idea if that was true. As I talked, I kept my eyes glued to the monitor. The hand stayed on the glass. I could see the vague outline of a head, but not enough to make out a face. After what felt like a full minute, the hand lifted, and the reflection drifted out of frame. I heard soft footsteps on the gravel just outside. Then silence. No knock, no voice, just that heavy quiet. The dispatcher asked if I had a back exit. I told her about the break room door that led to a stairwell and another locked door that opened to the side lot. She told me to go there and wait, taking the phone with me. I grabbed the keys and moved as quietly as I could. The break room was only a few steps away, but crossing that open space felt like walking through a spotlight. As I moved, I glanced at the monitor one last time. Camera 7 showed the empty office. In the reflection of the door, nothing. I shut the break room door behind me and locked it. The stairwell beyond was concrete and bare. It smelled like dust. I sat on the top step with the phone pressed to my ear, listening for any sound from the office. Every creak made me flinch. After a couple of minutes, the dispatcher told me the officers were turning onto our road. I heard the faint, distant wail of a siren. I stayed where I was until she said they were on site. Then I heard firm knocks and loud voices calling my name. I unlocked the lower door and stepped out into the side lot. 2 officers stood by their cruiser, blue and red lights throwing color across the metal doors. They cleared the office with me standing behind them. No one was inside. The front door was still locked. The blinds were still drawn. The only sign that anything had ever happened was a faint patch of fog on the glass at head height where someone had breathed against it. We went through the camera footage together. The timestamp on the clip where I first saw the man in lane 1 matched 6 minutes after midnight. We watched it frame by frame. In one frame, the lane was empty. In the next, he stood there in the middle. No walking in from the edge of the frame. No slow approach. It looked like he just appeared. Then, 2 seconds later, he was gone again. The clip from the office camera was worse. From the outside, the front of the office is not in view of any other camera. The only record is that reflection in the glass. On the footage, you can see me sitting at the desk. Then you can see the faint outline of someone outside the door, the hand on the glass, the slow slide. At one point, the reflection shifts, and you can just make out a face, but it is too distorted by the angle to really see. One of the officers asked if there was any chance it was a friend messing with me. I said no. Nobody knew I was working that night, except Doug and my girlfriend, and both were home. They checked the gate log again. Still nothing. No one had opened the gate since Paul with the pickup. The officers walked the property with me. We checked for footprints near the office, along the fence, by the back gate that stayed locked with a chain. The gravel around the office showed some scuffs, but that was it. It looked like someone had stood there and shifted their weight back and forth. No clear shoe print, no direction of travel, just vague marks that could have been from the week before. They took a report, but there was only so much they could do. Before they left, one of them gave me a look I still remember. Serious, almost apologetic. He told me that if anything else happened, anything at all, to call right away. I did not finish the shift alone. The owner lived 15 minutes away and came in after the officers called him. He is an older guy named Ray with a quiet voice. He stayed with me until sunrise. We sat in the office with the lights on, watching the screens. No more phantom gate buzzers. No more people popping up in the lanes. No reflection at the door. Just a cold, normal night. I kept working there for another month. Every shift after that, I would double-check the lock on the office door and triple-check the back door. I tried to tell myself it was a rare one-off event. Maybe someone had parked on the road and hopped the fence, then gone back the way they came. Maybe there was some electrical glitch in the cameras. That is what everyone suggested. But here is the part I do not tell most people. A week after that night, Ray had me go through some old files to clean up the system. There was a folder of archived access logs from the year before. I was scanning them when I noticed the same phone digits popping up at odd hours. 2 in the morning, 3:30, 4:05. The name on the account jumped out at me. It was a previous tenant who had rented Unit 209. Unit 209 was in Lane 1, right in the middle of where I had seen the man standing. The note on the account said the renter had stopped paying and the unit was seized by the company after they never responded to calls or letters. The date on that file was 7 months earlier. Ray happened to walk by when I was looking at it. I asked what had been in that unit when they opened it. He frowned and rubbed his jaw. Then he said there had not been much. A mattress on the floor, some trash, and a camp stove. Whoever rented it had basically been living in there at night until they disappeared. I asked if they ever found the guy. Ray shook his head. He said the police came out, took a look, and left. There was no blood, no sign of a struggle, just a unit that looked like someone had walked away in the middle of a night and never come back. That Monday, I turned in my notice. I told them it was because I found a better job, but that was not really the reason. The real reason is that I could not sit in that office anymore and watch those screens, knowing that someone had once made this place their home in the dark, slipping in and out around the edges of the cameras, and that for at least one night they came back. Whether he was coming for his old unit or for me, I still do not know. All I know is that every time I drive past a storage yard now, I glance at the little office where some night guy is probably sitting alone in front of a wall of monitors, and I wonder if anyone is standing just outside his door, where only the glass can see. My name is Jason. I am 32. And until last year, I worked nights as a security guard at a small hospital on the edge of our city. It was not a big place, maybe 4 floors and an older attached clinic building. My shift was from 10 at night to 6 in the morning. Most of the time it was quiet. Nurses, a few doctors, the cleaning crew, and me. Our security office was a cramped room in the basement next to the loading dock. There was a desk with 3 monitors that showed all the main hallways, entrances, and the parking lot. On the wall behind me was a pegboard with spare key cards and a list of extensions. The air always smelled faintly, like sanitizer and old coffee. My usual routine was simple. Check the cameras every few minutes, respond to calls, do a couple of rounds through the building, and keep anyone who did not belong there from wandering around. Every visitor after 10 had to go through the main emergency entrance so the night nurse could control doors from the desk. In theory, it was a locked building. In practice, people forgot doors and loading bay gates and side exits all the time. It was a Sunday night in February, cold, with a mix of rain and sleet coming down outside. The day security guy, a heavy older man named Carl, signed the log around 9:45 and left early. He was the type who believed nothing bad ever really happened. He kept telling me I was lucky to have such an easy job. Around 10:30, I did my first round. I used my key card on the stairwells and checked the side entrances. The automatic doors at the back of the first floor clinic building had a habit of not latching. I pushed on them just to be sure. They locked solid. The waiting room lights in that building were off, just green exit signs glowing and the street lamps outside throwing pale light across empty chairs. I went back down to the basement and settled in. On the cameras, I could see the main emergency entrance, where people still trickled in with flu symptoms or minor accidents. Nurses moved between rooms. Housekeeping pushed carts along the halls. It felt normal. The first strange thing that night was small. Around 11:20, I noticed movement on the camera that watched the clinic waiting room. That area was closed at night. During the day, families sat there for appointments with specialists. But after 10, the doors to that building were supposed to be locked and lights left off. The camera showed the outlines of chairs and the long, curved reception desk. In one of the chairs near the window, a shape sat that had not been there on my earlier round. At first I thought it was just a coat someone left behind, but then the shape shifted. A shoulder moved, a head turned slightly. Someone was sitting in the dark waiting room. I leaned closer to the screen. The image was grainy, but I could see enough. A man sat in a plastic chair near the window. He had a dark jacket and jeans and wore some kind of cap pulled low. His hands were in his lap. He was very still. I checked the door camera images for that building. The back door showed only the wet parking lot and the glowing lamps. The side entrance near the staff lot was empty. No record on the log of any late visitors being buzzed through to the clinic. That building was supposed to be closed and sealed. I picked up the radio and called the front desk. The charge nurse on duty was a woman named Karen who had seen everything. I asked if anyone was authorized to be in the clinic waiting room after hours. She sounded annoyed, the way nurses do when security acts jumpy. She said she had not let anyone back there. She added that if a visitor asked for privacy, she would know about it. I told her I saw someone on the camera. There was a pause, then a sigh. She said she would check the visitor log. A moment later, she called back and said no one had come in for the clinic since 9. She told me to go look. So I grabbed my flashlight and my key card and headed upstairs. The hallway outside the security office was empty. As I climbed to the first floor, the sound of the building changed. The basement was all muffled fans and hums. The main level was brighter, with the emergency doors sliding open and closed, and the soft electronic beeps from monitors drifting down the hall. The door to the clinic building sat at the far end of the first floor corridor. A sign above it listed the medical groups that had offices there. At night, we kept it locked, and only staff could open it with a keycard. I held my badge to the reader. It beeped, and the lock clicked. I stepped through. The difference was immediate. The hospital side was bright and busy. The clinic side was quiet and dim. Only a few lights glowed near exit signs and in the reception area. The air felt colder. I could hear the faint hiss of the ventilation system and nothing else. The waiting room was to the right, past the empty reception desk. Rows of chairs, a few fake plants, a kid's corner with a small table and some worn books. At night, it always looked a little unreal, like a stage set after the actors went home. I walked around the desk, scanning the chairs. My pulse was up. I told myself I would find nobody there and it would just be a shadow fooling the camera. But as I neared the window side, I saw him. A man sat in a chair that faced away from the hallway, turned slightly toward the big windows that looked out on the side parking lot. He wore a dark jacket, just like on the camera feed. The collar was pulled up. A baseball cap shaded his face. One hand rested on his knee. The other was tucked under his jacket, as if he was holding something against his stomach. He did not react to my footsteps. I stopped a few feet away and cleared my throat. My voice sounded too loud in that quiet room as I said he was not allowed to be there after hours, and asked if he was waiting for someone in the main hospital. He turned his head slowly toward me. His eyes looked tired, and his face was lined, but there was something flat in the way he looked at me. He said he was just waiting for a doctor and that it was a free country and he was not bothering anyone. I felt the hair on the back of my neck rise. There was something off in his tone. Not drunk, not high, just not quite lined up with the situation. I told him the clinic side was closed and that he needed to go back to the main entrance where someone could check him in. I gestured toward the door. He did not move. He just kept looking at me. Then he smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was more like he was testing different expressions on his face. He said he liked it better on this side because it was quieter. I kept my voice calm and told him he still had to leave. I said I would escort him back to the emergency entrance and we could get him squared away there. That was when his hand under the jacket shifted in a way that made my stomach clamp. I could not see anything, but it was the kind of movement people make when they remember they have a weapon and do not want to show it yet. I told him that if he did not come with me, I would have to call the police. His eyes flicked past me for a moment toward the hallway. For a second, his calm slipped, and I saw something hard and intent. Then it was gone, and the lazy half-smile was back. He stood up slowly. He was taller than I expected, and thinner. He walked past me toward the door. I kept a good distance behind him, my hand near the radio on my belt. He did not look back, did not talk. We walked down the short hallway to the door that led back to the hospital side. I swiped my card, the lock clicked, and he stepped through. The lights and sounds of the hospital washed over us. He hesitated, then turned left, instead of heading straight toward the emergency desk. That left turn bothered me. The emergency entrance was straight down the hall. To the left were elevators and stairs that led to the upper floors, including pediatrics on the third and postpartum on the second. I called after him that he was going the wrong way. He did not stop. He moved faster now. I grabbed my radio and told Karen I had an unknown male inside the clinic side who was heading away from the main desk. I gave a quick description. My voice shook a little. She said she was calling the house supervisor. The man reached the elevator bank and jabbed the call button. I told him again to wait by the front desk. I was ready to stand between him and the elevator if I had to. But before the doors opened, his head snapped toward the stairwell door nearby. He chose the stairs instead. He pushed through and disappeared upward. That set off every alarm in my head. Most visitors who are lost go slower. They look at signs. They hesitate. He knew where the elevators were. When he changed course to the stairs, it felt deliberate. I broke into a jog and hit the stairwell door a few seconds after him. I heard his footsteps above, fast but controlled, not panicked. I radioed again, breathless now, telling them he was in the stairs and heading up. I did not want to chase him alone, but the training in my head said I could not let unknown people wander freely. I followed at a distance, staying one floor below the sound of his steps. The number markers on the wall ticked past. Second floor, then third. His steps slowed as he neared the third floor landing. That floor was pediatrics. I stopped halfway between the second and third landings and listened. For a moment there was silence. Then I heard the quiet clunk of a door opening and closing above, very soft, as if someone eased it shut to avoid the loud latch. I went up to the third floor door and cracked it open an inch. The pediatrics corridor was lit with softer lights, the kind they use at night to keep kids sleeping. The walls had cartoon murals. A line of closed patient room doors stretched away, with a nurse's station at the far end. I could not see the man. I stepped out and listened. The only sounds were the low buzz of machines and the distant clink of metal from the station where a nurse arranged supplies. I considered calling out, but I did not want to panic families. I walked toward the nurse's station. The charge nurse there that night, a big guy named Henry, looked up as I approached. I asked if he had seen a man in a dark jacket and cap come through. He frowned and shook his head. Before I could explain more, one of the younger nurses came around the corner from the far end of the hall. She looked rattled. She said a man had just tried to swipe a badge at the secure door leading to the nursery and had gotten angry when it beeped red. She thought he was with a family but did not recognize him, and he had moved off when she approached. My skin went cold. The nursery required a special staff badge. Without it, you could not get inside. The door had a small glass porthole. From where I stood, I could see it at the end of the hall. No one was near it now. I asked which way the man went. She gestured toward a side hallway that led back toward the elevators and another stairwell. I told Henry to call security office and the main desk. I sprinted down that side hall, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. At the end of the hall, there was a door marked Stair 2. It was propped open with a plastic wedge. That was against every rule. I kicked the wedge away and listened. Footsteps echoed down from above, heading up toward the fourth floor. That floor was mostly administrative offices and a few sleep study rooms, empty on weekends. I was sweating now despite the cold. I moved up, forcing myself to stay 2 flights behind. I told myself if he forced into any patient area, I would close the distance. For now, I wanted eyes on him and more staff between him and any kids. On the 4th floor landing, the footprints stopped. I eased up and opened the door a crack. The hallway there was darker, motion sensors only, offices with closed doors, dark waiting alcoves. No sign of him. For a second, I thought he might be hiding right around the corner, waiting. That thought froze me. I stood there at the thin opening of the door and felt a heavy weight of silence pressing in. Then I saw movement on the ceiling. A small red dot from the camera overhead blinked, as it always did. That dot reminded me we had eyes on this spot from the security room. I backed up, went down 1 flight so I was between pediatrics and the dark floor, and used the stairwell phone to call my office. The phone rang and rang. No answer. That made no sense. I was the only one assigned to nights, but I had left only 15 minutes earlier. The office was a locked room. I hung up and tried the code that rang the front desk instead. Karen answered, frazzled now. She said police were on the way. She also said that 2 minutes earlier, the security office phone had dialed the emergency desk, but when she picked up, there was only breathing, and then a click. The back of my neck prickled. If I was in the stairwell, and nobody else had a key to that room except Carl and the supervisor, who had called from there, I told Karen to send someone from housekeeping down to meet the officers, and not to let anyone into nursery or pediatrics without double-checking IDs. Then I went back down to the basement. I did not like leaving that hallway, but something told me that if the man had gotten back into the stairwell, he could already be anywhere. When I reached the security office door, it looked normal. Closed, with a tiny metal plate that said "Security" in black letters. I unlocked it and pushed it open, half expecting someone to be in my chair. The room was empty. The monitors glowed on the desk. One coffee cup sat where I had left it, ring of brown at the bottom. The air felt slightly colder, like the door had been open recently. I looked at the monitor that showed the clinic waiting room, empty now. The chair by the window where the man had sat was vacant. I rewound the feed and watched the moment I had first seen him, then my arrival, then escorting him out. That all lined up with what I remembered. Then, I switched to the fourth-floor hallway camera. My stomach turned as I watched the feed. After I had followed him into the stairwell the first time, about 30 seconds passed where the hallway was empty. Then the door eased open just a crack. The man slipped out, moving low in the dark, and pressed himself into a dead corner under the camera, almost directly below it. You could barely see him, just a hint of motion at the bottom of the frame. He waited there, still and patient, while I cracked the door from the stairwell and peered out from the other end of the hall. If I had stepped even 3 feet farther into the corridor, I would have been in his reach. On the screen, I saw myself retreat back through the stair door. Then the man moved. He walked down the hall toward the elevator side, stepped into a blind patch between views, and disappeared for almost a minute. When he came back into view, he was holding something in his hand. I leaned closer. It was one of our spare key cards. The color stripe was hospital blue. He twirled it once between his fingers, then headed for the elevator. The next camera showed him stepping out at the basement level. He walked straight to the security office door. He did not hesitate, did not look around. He pulled a key card from his pocket, one of the spares from the pegboard, and swiped it. The little light blinked green. The feed switched to the interior camera and showed him walking in. For a long moment he just stood behind my chair, looking down at the monitors, one hand resting lightly on the back. Then he sat. He watched the screens. He picked up the phone and dialed the emergency desk, held it to his ear, said nothing, then hung up. After that he watched a few more seconds, stood, put the key card back on the pegboard in a different spot, and left, pulling the door gently closed behind him. The last view of him was from the camera at the loading dock exit. He used the badge on that door too, stepped out into the rain, and walked off toward the lower parking lot. No car on the cameras ever picked him up leaving. By the time police arrived, he was long gone. They reviewed the footage, took copies, and questioned everyone. No one recognized him. Housekeeping said they might have seen a man in a dark jacket earlier that week near the clinic, but could not be sure. Later we traced the spare badge he used. It belonged to a nurse who had reported her card missing 3 days earlier. She thought she had misplaced it in her car. She had already gotten a replacement, but nobody had thought to deactivate the original yet. That meant, for 3 days, someone could move around our building at night with a valid badge if they had found it. The hospital brought in more cameras and changed protocols. No more unattended bags in the lobby. No more propped open doors. They added an extra guard to nights for a while. We all tried to act like we were just being careful. I lasted 2 more months before I quit. I told them it was because of the pay, but that was not the truth. The real reason is that I could not shake the image from that footage. The way he hid under the camera, as if he knew exactly where the blind spot was. The calm way he sat in my chair and watched my screens. The way he tested his access to the nursery door before choosing another route. When you work nights in a hospital, you know you are surrounded by sickness and crisis. You prepare yourself for angry relatives, for drunk patients, for confrontations. What I was not prepared for was someone who moved through all of that with quiet patience, who waited in the dark parts of the building where the sensors did not always click on, who sat in my seat just to see how much of his own reflection he could erase. People ask me sometimes why I still wake up at 3 in the morning and walk my apartment checking locks. I tell them about that night. Not about the chase in the stairwell or the soft closing doors, but about the footage of a stranger sitting where I should have been, watching every hallway I trusted, holding a badge that should have been disabled, and then leaving without a sound, confident that no one would ever really know what he came there to do. My name is Brian. I'm 34, and for almost 2 years I worked nights at a small train station called Ridley Junction. It was an old commuter stop on the outskirts of town. 2 platforms, a narrow tunnel under the tracks, a ticket lobby with cracked tile, and a small glass security booth where I spent most of my shifts. Ridley used to be busy decades ago, but by the time I worked there, it was mostly dead after 10. One last train came through at 11:20, and after that, the place sat empty until morning. Crews showed up. My job was to keep the building open for anyone catching the late train, patrol the platforms, and make sure nobody slept in the tunnel or hid in the bathrooms. Most nights were the same. A few college kids coming back from the city, a tired worker or two heading home from a late shift, then nothing but the hum of the fluorescent lights and the echo of passing freight trains far down the line. But there was one night that still sits in the back of my mind like a stain. It happened in early summer on a Friday, when the air was warm, but the platforms still felt cold after dark. I started my shift at 10, and everything felt normal for the first few minutes. The evening clerk, a skinny guy named Owen, handed me the keys and the radio, and told me about some minor maintenance issues. A light out on the east platform, a toilet that would not flush right. Nothing urgent. He left around 10:10, and I locked the main doors behind him. I walked my first round. The tunnel under the tracks had a damp smell, like soil and dust mixed with old graffiti paint. My footsteps echoed off the narrow walls. The east platform was empty except for a newspaper blowing across the concrete. The west platform had 2 people waiting for the 11:20, both staring at their phones and barely noticing me. I went back to the security booth and settled in. The booth had 4 cameras, one for each platform, one for the tunnel, and one for the ticket lobby. None had audio, just grainy footage in bad lighting. I poured a cup of burnt coffee from the old metal pot and watched the monitors with half attention. At 10:30 something flickered on the tunnel camera, a quick shape at the far end, near the stairs leading to the east side. I stared at the screen waiting for it to appear again. Nothing moved. The stairs were empty, the tunnel dim and still. Sometimes shadows from cars on the road above settled strangely in that camera, so I brushed it off. At 10:45, I checked the lobby camera. A tall man stood near the map on the wall. He wore a dark jacket and a blue ball cap. His back was to the camera, and he was standing too close to the map, as if he was reading something written in tiny print. His shoulders were stiff, unmoving. I could not remember hearing the lobby door open, but the booth was at the far end, so I sometimes missed quiet people. I watched him for a minute. He did not shift his weight or take out a ticket or check a schedule. He just stood there facing the wall like someone had frozen him. I clicked my radio. Nothing came through. Then I grabbed the flashlight and stepped out of the booth. The air on the platform felt cooler. The station lights buzzed overhead. I walked into the lobby with my steps echoing on the tile. The man was gone. The map was right where he had been standing, but there was nobody near it. The lobby was completely empty. I checked the bathrooms. Nothing. I went back into the lobby again and looked around slowly. The only exit besides the main doors was the tunnel. If he had gone toward the east platform, I would have seen him on the camera. If he had gone toward the west platform, the 2 waiting passengers would have noticed. I looked up at the corner where the lobby camera was mounted. The red light was blinking like normal. I stepped back into the booth and checked the footage. I rewound the last few minutes. There he was, plain as day, standing in front of the map. Then he simply was not. One frame he was there. The next frame, that part of the lobby was empty. No walking, no blur, no motion, just gone. A glitch, I told myself. That was easier to accept than anything else. At 11, the two people waiting for the last train boarded when it rolled in. The platform emptied, and the train pulled away with a metallic roar that slowly faded into the distance. After that, Ridley Junction was quiet. Too quiet. Even the road above seemed still. I sat in the booth and watched the cameras more carefully than usual. At 11:27, the tunnel camera flickered again. This time, there was no mistaking it. A man walked through the far end of the tunnel, not toward the stairs, just across the frame from left to right. His head was down, his hands in his pockets, his walk slow and heavy. What made it strange was that he did not come from either stairwell. The stairs were both clearly visible on camera. The left led up to the west platform, the right led up to the east platform. He came from neither. He entered the frame from a blank concrete wall that had no door, no opening, nothing but flat surface. My breath caught in my throat. I leaned closer to the screen. He walked with this dragging movement, as if his shoes were too heavy. I waited for him to reach one of the stairwells. Instead, he stopped halfway between them. Then he turned very slowly to face the camera. The footage got grainier when he turned. His face was shadowed under the cap. He stood there, staring up at the camera like he knew exactly where it was. Then, after a few seconds, he walked out of the frame toward the east stairs. But when I switched to the east platform camera, he never came out. The stairs stayed empty. My heart thudded hard in my chest. I told myself it had to be a delayed feed or bad wiring. Something technical. Something normal. I sat back in the chair, rubbed my eyes, and took a long drag of coffee trying to steady myself. At 11:40, the lobby camera blinked. I looked at it and froze. The man from the tunnel was standing at the exact same spot near the map where the first man had been earlier. Except now he was facing the camera directly. His hands were by his sides. His jacket looked damp, almost like it was steaming. I pushed myself out of the chair so fast I knocked the coffee over. I stepped out of the booth with my flashlight gripped tight. The lobby lights were dim, but not dim enough to hide someone standing there. I breathed shallow and walked in. Empty again. Completely empty. I stepped back to the door and looked both ways into the streets outside. No cars, no pedestrians. The night felt thick and heavy. I went back to the booth and checked the camera. Rewind, play, rewind, play. The clip was impossible. The man appeared in one frame and was gone in the next. No transition, no blur. On one of the rewinds, I caught something strange in the split second before he vanished. His head tilted to the side. His shoulders tightened, as if he had heard something behind him, something that made him leave very fast. At this point, I should have called someone. My supervisor, the transit police, anyone. But it was late, and I could not bring myself to say out loud what I thought I had seen. I told myself if anything else happened, I would make the call. At midnight, something else did happen. The west platform camera blinked twice. When it returned, the angle was slightly changed, like the camera had been touched. Nothing ever touched those cameras. They were bolted into the metal support beams. I watched the screen as the platform sat empty. The wind moved a paper cup across the concrete. Then a shadow crossed the far end of the platform. A long, thin shape cast across the ground. I leaned in closer, waiting for the person who made it to come into view. After a moment, the shadow bent, stretched, then froze. No person stepped into frame. No figure ever appeared. Just that frozen shadow stretching across the platform. I stood up again. My skin felt cold even in the warm summer air. My hand shook. I scanned every camera for movement. The tunnel was empty. The lobby empty. Both platforms empty. But then something strange caught my eye. In the corner of the booth, on the small shelf beside the radio, sat a folded ticket. A single one-way paper ticket. I had not put it there. Owen had not left any such thing. The station did not even use paper tickets anymore, except in emergencies. My stomach twisted. The ticket was damp, as if someone had held it with sweaty hands. I reached for it slowly. The moment I touched it, my radio crackled with static. Not a voice, not a word, just a harsh burst of static that made me flinch. Then silence. I stared at the radio, then at the cameras again. Then the radio crackled once more. This time, There was a faint clicking sound, rhythmic, slow, like footsteps on concrete. I pressed the talk button and said for any units nearby to identify themselves. Nothing responded. The clicking continued. Slow, metallic, growing louder. I checked the tunnel camera again. Empty. I checked the lobby. Still empty. Then the clicking stopped mid-sound. The radio went silent. I told myself I needed to do one more round before calling in. Just one. To prove the place was empty, that the radio interference and the footage were some technical fault. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out of the booth. The air outside felt wrong. It had that charged feeling like a storm was about to break, though the sky above was clear. I descended the stairs into the tunnel. Every step echoed twice, like something below me copied the sound a beat later. The tunnel felt colder than usual. The dim yellow lights flickered overhead. Halfway through, I stopped. There on the floor was a shoe. A single black sneaker lying on its side. It looked worn, like it had been dragged across pavement. I nudged it with my boot. Something about it bothered me. A thin smear of mud on the toe. A small tear near the heel. It did not belong to anyone waiting for the last train earlier. I scanned the tunnel slowly. Then I felt a sudden drop in temperature, sharp enough that I could see my breath for a moment. The air went silent. No distant road noise. No wind. Just silence. I gripped my flashlight tighter and continued walking. The east stairs came into view. And something else. A man was standing at the top of the stairs. The man from the cameras. Cap low, jacket dark, shoulders rigid. He was turned sideways, as if listening for something on the street above. Then his head rotated toward me. Slow, steady, intent. I froze. My flashlight beam shook in my hand. I felt every muscle in my body lock. The man did not speak. He did not walk. He simply stood there watching me, still as stone. I forced myself to take one step back, then another. He did not move, but something about him made my heart slam against my ribs. Something about the stillness, like he was waiting for something specific. I stepped back into the center of the tunnel. The lights buzzed overhead. Then, in the blink of an eye, he was gone. I ran. I did not care about protocol. I sprinted through the tunnel, up the west stairs, and into open air. I bolted across the platform to the booth and slammed the door shut behind me. I grabbed the phone with shaking hands and called transit police. I told them someone had been inside the station and that he was hiding in the tunnel areas. I left out the details that made no sense. They arrived in 6 minutes. They searched the tunnels, platforms, lobby, bathrooms, tracks, every place a person could possibly hide. They found nothing. No footprints, no fresh mud, no sign of forced entry. But they did find one thing. A second shoe. It was placed neatly beside the first in the tunnel, almost lined up, almost deliberate. Nobody could explain it. Nobody ever claimed a missing person from that station. No reports of anyone matching the man in the cap. No record of him entering the building at any time. I finished the shift with an officer by my side. I quit a week later. I still think about that night. About the man who kept appearing only where the cameras failed. About how he moved with that strange, slow purpose. About how he seemed to listen for something I could not hear. About the radio clicks that sounded like footsteps coming closer. And about the one-way ticket that appeared beside my radio, damp and waiting, stamped with a destination that has not existed on our train system for over 40 years.